is the ending of a number of cycles, and it's going to be a rough one on the planet.
Really?
The kind of things they're suggesting may hit the Earth and all the people who live on it is just the kind of things we're seeing with the tsunami and, unfortunately, with New Orleans, and yet to see with other instances.
When might that event happen, the final event?
What do you mean, final?
Jeez. Well, or the next big one. I mean, if this is all this stuff they have known about, will it all come about by your 2010, 2012 time frame?
Time frame? Yeah, it's a little sketchy from humans because we're not all that precise. For instance, if you look at the Freemasons, why are there 33 degrees in the Freemasons when there's actually only 30 days in each month within the procession? Each group of 30 days times 12 bringing us to a total of 360 degrees in the total procession. Why have 33 degrees in their masonry symbolism if it's linked to this? Well, it turns out, from a human viewpoint, you can't really tell where you're nudging in from, say, out of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. It takes you a few sets of degrees, or a few times your 72 years, to actually be really sure.
Jeez.
So it takes 3 of those before you're absolutely positive, oh yeah, we're for sure in the age of Aquarius.
Now, but interesting, the age of Aquarius, Cliff, is the ushering in, like we just said, of this new time era, beginning of time again. This has never happened, or that's not the result of going into a new age. It just so happens that at this time, it's probably landing at the same time that we go into the age of Aquarius.
Correct. The way that all the gears might line up inside of a clock every so often.
Yeah. Because Pisces is a water sign.
Yep.
We are leaving an era where water dominated everything with humanity, whether it's the sailboat, steam engine, rocket ships, and on and on.
Globalization, everything.
Right. Now we're coming into the age of Aquarius, which is an air sign. And as we approach the cusp, the switching over, that's where we come in with flying, radio, television, just on and on and on. So we're leaving the water cycle, coming into the air, which is more of a mental sign. And I'm wondering, will that carry over into this new time that's going to happen 2010, 2012, or is it just all thrown out and we start the whole damn thing again?
No, I don't think it works quite like that. I would think that we're still operating within those cycles, and that it will continue because it's very complex. I mean, the number of layers, for instance, in our particular onion is exceedingly deep. And each and every layer will operate independently of the others.
Interesting. Boy, oh boy.
The idea of starting time over is not necessarily what was indicated in either the Kali Yuga or the Mayans. Now, in the Kali Yuga, it's a very difficult time, but there are certain things that they say can happen. For instance, if one is advanced enough, you can sort of request it when you die during the Kali Yuga, and you'll only have 7 more lifetimes, and you're out. You don't have to work through the hundreds of thousands, sort of like a get-out-of-jail-free card. So that's kind of a curious thing. The Kali Yuga actually says that basically they would agree with the starting over business, right? Because the Kali Yuga is based on sort of a theory that really at its heart is kind of nasty from a human viewpoint or from a life viewpoint. Because here's a concept for you. Say that there was a big bucket full of life force, like you would have a big bucket full of water.
Yeah, right.
And you spill it out on the planet, and you get 6 beings to come out of it. Well, they've each got 1/6 of a bucket. That would be the beginning of time, where your beings were the huge giants with a big life force going on out and doing great tasks. And this is the way that the time is organized, in a sense, within the groups of peoples that emerge out of India. At the end of the time, you got 20-30 billion people sharing that same bucket of life force. And what they say is, at the end of that time, well, a lot of those people go back to the bucket. And then the new ones who come out, why, they get a bigger share.
Okay.
Because you won't have so many.
Oh, yeah, right. Now, in the Sanskrit,
yes,
does it give any indication of what the change is going to be, what it's going to be like? I understand the ones that are going to go back to the bucket and start over again. And they got 100,000 or whatever cycles it is to maybe reach the same stage again in the next, 26,000 years.
Right.
Does it give any indication, Clif, as to what those people who are allowed to go on might experience?
Well, let's clarify some words here, because you're talking to a linguist. I don't know that allowed is the real appropriate one. Let's just say those who continue.
I left that open, yeah.
Okay. Because allowed really does say that there's somebody out there who has authority over this, and I don't really think it works that way. But yeah, there's a number of very interesting descriptions. Everything from extremely fanciful to some that border on boring scientific literature that one might find in some obscure journal in the United States or other area. Some of the descriptions, for instance, say, especially the scientific ones that are really of interest, say that there's a threshold or a crescendo. And once the bucket is split into approximately what they... we have to back up a bit. Within the literature of Sanskrit is this concept called Indra's net. Indra was a really cool god, and Indra had this net that was composed of strings that were connected by the most brilliant of pearls. And what made Indra's net really, really, really cool was that each pearl held within it the reflection of all other pearls and any other pearl in the net. Now, that was written about 6,000 years ago.
Okay.
Okay. In a way, it really describes the Internet.
Interesting, isn't it?
Right, where from one pearl in Indra's net, within the story, the really cool part of the whole thing was that Indra would say to this mortal, "Hey, mortal, I got this thing for you to do, and I want you to go on the other side of the planet, but I'm not going to put you to the trouble of walking there or getting on boats and all of that. Hop onto my net, and I'll scoot you from one pearl to the next, and you'll be right there."
Wow.
So this was described about 7,000 years ago.
Now, could it also mean, because that is just too coincidental, but could it also mean that every single one of us as a human being, we reflect the images of every other human being on planet Earth, wherever, but also we reflect the image of our Creator itself?
That easily could be the case, and in fact is most often interpreted that way, and that's the framework that's built within the mundane religion of Hinduism.
Okay.
Okay, but there's a lot of people that say, as with all the myths, they say there's two aspects of them. There's, if you will, the G-rating, out-the-door public consumption version, and this might include all the myths that we read about in ancient Greece and, the fire, Prometheus, and all of that kind of thing. And then there's the hidden version that if you actually really read between the lines, you get this following kind of information. Now, the more technical one actually goes on to discuss some of the other changes that came about, that come about due to this particular period of time. And one of the things that is extremely curious is that this idea of a threshold or crescendo, which, if you read really close, actually describes what we might call a singularity, where, in their view, what actually had to happen was that the big bucket of life force had to be split among the same number of people as there were more or less the number of brain cells in a single person. So if you have 10 billion brain cells there, and George has got 10 million and 5, well, we're going to just say around 10 million, right? And or 10 billion, excuse me. And their contention was, the literature says that humanity, and this is sort of agreed with in the Narmer plate, has reached this point a couple of times in the past, and we've been successful in the past at once of having 10 billion people on the planet at once and going through this transition.
Right. Yep.
And at that transition point, the bucket gets refilled, but a lot of the individuals within that 10 billion group get into this particular category, and they go on to another level of vibration, if you will, or another density.
We had
and then there's all kinds of really cool stuff about that, but it's a secondary issue, really.
We had a guest last week who wrote a book about her son. And her son, knowingly, is a walk-in and describes who he is and where he's from and what have you. And one of the things that was brought up in this conversation was that we on planet Earth, humanity, has gone through this cycle many times and come up to the same level or even beyond our level of technological advancement and have screwed up at the end. And we are at that same stage, rapidly approaching it now, but if we screw it up this time, we're not going to do it again. We have to basically, everything starts over. And that fits in, Cliff, with exactly what you're saying.
There is that. There's a whole lot of that kind of stuff within the Sanskrit, correct. Unlike the Chinese, unlike many of the other languages, there's a huge library of Sanskrit that's really never been translated out of Sanskrit. And we just don't know how detailed it is because a lot of these things have just been preserved and there's so much to read that no one's ever read them.
Well, it's almost like the Sumerian texts.
Correct, yeah.
I mean, how can humanity be so stupid as to have possibly the answer to every question that could ever come up, and they're too busy watching The Simpsons or some inane program on television and all the other stuff to find out what is really going on, what is life about, why are we here, where are we going? They're too damn lazy.
Well, that may not be the case.
Well,
okay, I'm a very harsh individual, right?
Yeah, but you're kinder than I am, then.
Well, no, I'm actually more pragmatic.
Okay.
Because I say I'm in no way really different from any other human, and I can judge some aspects of myself, and as Buckminster Fuller says, extract from the special case and apply to a general case and see if it holds up. And I know a lot of other people that would also agree that the condition you described does not arise out of choice, but is actually manufactured.
Oh,
that these people are built and designed and treated such that that's the choices they're given, and of those choices, this is the one they take.
Or at least they are forced into that choice by the powers that be.
Correct. And the school systems, etc. Yes.
Sure. I mean, because they're the ones that manipulate everything. I mean, go back, read Charlotte Isherbeat's book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. I mean, see where we were.
Right. Oh, I know. I've read newspapers out of the 1800s, and I'm flabbergasted. And I continually on eBay, whenever I've got a couple of dollars, go and shop for books that are pre-1900, and you get to spend a couple of dollars, and you get some of these things that put any of our current textbooks to shame.
Absolutely. Charlotte had, one time she was on, and she brought a test, an 8th grade test from before the 1900s, 1880, 1890, for 8th grade. Cliff,
calculus and trigonometry.
Yes, I could not answer the question. I think maybe I got 1 or 2 right. I mean,
scary, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, where could we be if the egomaniacs haven't destroyed everything? I mean, why? Well,
let's go back to our little gray bastarditos there.
Well, if that's...
Because we've got to assume certain things. Buckminster Fuller, Mark Twain, any number of very good thinkers came to the idea that there was an invisible hand behind things. And within certain contexts, many of them doubted that it was entirely due to the strength and resources of the self-styled elite. And I would agree with it. Now, we also have in our data, going to this very same point, stuff showing up saying that NASA is going to get into a world of hurt here sometime in September relative to the public opinion and NASA. Now, we know that the federal government issues that we're seeing now, we could have misinterpreted it, but I'm still holding out that NASA itself is going to screw up and bring themselves up to a point where there is a big public brouhaha about something they know.
Do you think